The lead hook is one of the most versatile punches in fighting. It's useful for both initiating and ending combinations, but it truly shines on the counter. Vicente Luque is proof of the left hook's effectiveness. Otherwise a very limited striker, Luque's sharp, powerful, and versatile left hook has carried him to a successful career as a knockout artist. Luque's MO is simple. He walks his man down with his head bolt upright, holding his hands in an open high guard that scarcely moves at all. When opponents realize how open he is defensively and start trying to work around the guard, he whips his lead hand around and smacks them on the chin. The guard exists mainly to convince fighters to crack it open, while the threat of the left hook does most of his defensive work for him. The counter left hook is the meat of Luque's attack. The beauty in it is that the left hook serves as an effective counter to just about anything that puts the opponent in punching range. It's a great tool to attack the opponent's entries, striking them as they move from outside to inside. He'll attack the jab by slipping outside of it while throwing the hook, or just follow it back with a longer hook after eating the jab. He's also found it particularly effective as a counter to southpaw entries. In southpaw versus orthodox matchups, fighters often key in on the open rear hand, forgetting about the nearer lead hand. The lead hand and shoulder naturally drop as they throw the rear hand, creating a path for the counter hook, and Luque's hook catches them from the blind spot outside their shoulder. If the southpaw tries to control his lead hand while stepping in to block Luque's jab, he'll just circle it outwards with a hook. But the lead hook need not only be aimed at countering specific strikes, it can just as easily be flung out during heated exchanges when an aggressive opponent is unprepared to defend. Luque's own shoddy defense encourages fighters to flurry on him, but at some point in their combination he'll find space to recover his feet and shoot out a powerful hook. Since it attacks on a curved trajectory, the opponent's punches don't naturally take them out of its path as they might with straight shots. Instead, fighters usually either give ground or duck, both of which take some heat off of Luque, or they keep hitting him and just take the hook on the chin. Luque's most potent left hooks come as he's drawing his man onto them. Having a powerful counter in your back pocket is always great, but a truly effective counterpuncher knows how to convince his opponents to initiate the attacks that he wants to counter. Luque will step in and throw a quick non-committal jab or combination to get his opponent looking to counter, before taking a short hop backwards and loading his rear leg for the hook. The ideal power hook uses a weight transfer from front leg to back leg to produce massive rotational force, and by getting his man stepping onto the blow, the impact is further increased. Luque will occasionally use a long, almost straight-armed lead hook as a counter to the leg kick. This is typically not advised as the long lead hook turns the lead leg inward, exposing the squishy bits of the calf and thigh and making a check impossible. But you have to work with the tools you've got, and Luque has found some success with it. Luque's aggression fits him naturally into the role of a pressure fighter, and his lead hook is his primary tool to cut off opponents circling toward his lead side. Rotational strikes are useful here as they attack the space to an opponent's side rather than attacking at a single point. Even if they take the punch on their guard, their momentum will halt them for a moment, giving Luque a chance to open up with more punches. The advancing lead hook is thrown with just a slight elongation of the stance or on a forward hop, so after it hits something, Luque is immediately ready to step back into stance with a hard right hand or continue advancing. Hooking the body is even better as a cage cutting tool, since the head can slip underneath the punch, but the body remains in place. Luque will occasionally walk his man into the body hook, but he mostly sticks to the head with it. At a longer range, the left hook can be thrown as a leaping strike to cover more distance. This usually convinces opponents to back up and allows Luque to advance with his pressure, but with an opponent on the cage, it becomes a powerful hurting blow as they have nowhere to retreat. The great thing about being a pressure fighter who likes to hit on the counter is that a fighter with his back to the cage will often make some of his silliest swings. With the imposing threat of Luque's power and no ground left to give, they'll often lash out in desperation to regain space, which takes them directly into his counter hook. Luque's left hook is also integral to his combination work. His jab is a thudding punch that shoots straight out from his shoulder, demanding his opponent's attention. The synergy between the jab and hook is simple but effective. The standard defense to the jab is holding the hand out in front to parry, while the left hook requires the hand at the side of the head to block. When opponents respond to his jab by extending their rear hand, the hook simply sails around it to the open face. The lead hook is also an excellent strike to end combinations on. If the rear hand is thrown last, it leaves you squared up and open to returns. But adding a lead hook on the end puts you back into a strong stance with the squishy bits of the body hidden and your chin tucked neatly behind the lead shoulder. Since it's a rotational punch off the nearest hand, advancing lead hooks can track opponents as they circle or back away from an exchange. Throwing a long right hand at a backtracking fighter will leave you off balance with your head past your feet, but a long left hook keeps you in stance and allows you to follow up. Luque will occasionally use the momentum of a hard right hand to weave into a left hook, sneaking it through a blind spot as his man is distracted trying to counter the big right swing. Another setup Luque plays with is the classic leg kick to lead hook, where the kick punts the opponent off balance and loads the hips for the hook. The trick to this is that the leg kick is either thrown as a quick strike with little commitment, so that the hips can return fast into the left hook as the opponent is drawn onto it, or the leg kick is thrown with enough power to knock the leg out from under them, which gives you time to reset your hips for the slower hook. Luque's setup is a little bit muddled, as his kick is sort of in between. Not quick and low commitment enough to snap his hips back immediately into the hook, but also not committed enough to break the opponent's balance. There are many ways to throw the left hook, and Luque varies his mechanics to punch at different angles, switching between tight palm-up hooks, long-range hooks with the palm down, and short-thrusting shovel hooks to hook from almost chest to chest. But he has another unique variation that's not often seen in MMA. Jack Dempsey talks about the corkscrew punch in his book Championship Fighting. He describes the punch as a way to get power into mid-range hooks without telegraphing. The shoulder thrusts out like a jab, but before it lands, the forearm and fist are turned downwards in a screwing motion and the elbow lifted up. This causes the punch to land on the largest two knuckles with the thumb pointing down and gives the blow extra rotational force. Dempsey credits Charles "Kid" McCoy with popularizing the punch. McCoy was the middleweight champion in the late 1800s who reportedly came up with the punch when he saw a cat batting at a ball of string. Luque uses this corkscrew punch consistently to a few different ends. It allows him to sneak in punches from awkward angles, thrusting the fist directly at the chin from close range. The downward snap of the punch lets him get the striking knuckles on the head of a ducking opponent who would otherwise be underneath the path of a normal left hook. Dempsey describes the punch as an effective counter to the opponent's right hand, as the direct trajectory of the corkscrew can beat it to the target, where a standard rotational hook doesn't. Luque uses this often, sneaking the corkscrew punch inside the shoulder to counter straight rights. It's more powerful than a jab and also offers greater protection. The crossing right hand can beat the jab, as the head is slipped inside the jab and the right hand sails over top onto the chin. But the screwing motion and weight transfer of the corkscrew punch naturally raises the lead shoulder and creates a slight dip in the hips, which shields the chin. The downward snap of the punch also tracks the opponent's inside slip better than the jab, so the punch still lands when the opponent's head is offline. Luque uses the corkscrew punch similarly against southpaws, sneaking it inside the right shoulder, though this is usually a delayed counter thrown after a jab or lead hook. Since the lead hands line up, he's not able to beat their jab to the punch by going second, but he can absorb it and return a more powerful corkscrew punch as it retracts. He'll also use the corkscrew punch in exchanges with his weight over his lead hip to settle it back onto his rear and snap out an unusually long hook that still lands with the striking knuckles. Thrown this way, it almost looks like a jab, but one that snaps the opponent's head back violently. It also allows him to land a power left hand on an opponent circling away from his left hook. While the rotational hook is too slow to catch them, he can just throw it like a jab across his body on a direct path while turning his fist down to add snap to the punch. Luque's left hook also fits in nicely with the few grappling looks he regularly uses. The hook leads right into collar ties in the clinch, as when opponents step inside on it, the forearm ends up clubbing them in the side of the head in perfect position for grabbing the neck. Luque will grab double collar ties off the hook and look to smash in knees. He also uses it to punch on the break. The natural reaction to a strong hooker in close is to spend lots of time ducking down, as slipping to the side leaves you still in the hook's path and pulling your head back is dangerous. This plays right into Luque's game though, as he has a whole series of front headlock chokes designed to punish opponents for desperately ducking in on his hips. While Luque's left hook is brilliant and varied, his longer range offense isn't as subtle, and the fighters who beat him tend to do it by picking him off with long straight shots or body kicks, and staying out of the hook's effective range. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. For more combat sports analysis, follow my Substack at mixingmartialarts.substack.com, where I post in-depth breakdowns on MMA, grappling, and Muay Thai.